So we've talked about the weather change this morning. When it does that, I tend to get in a little bit of pain. So Friday night I got off work and I took a muscle relaxer, and that usually puts me in a bad mood. Not because of anything, but just like effects of the medicine. So yesterday I went to the store and I was being a little grumpy butt. Just putting through the store, getting mad that anybody dared to be in the store while I was in there. And I was wearing the shirt equivalent of this hoodie, which has Jesus on the back of it. And being a little grumpy butt, moving through just... And this lady was like, "I like your shirt." And I stopped and looked at her. I was like, "Thank you." She was like, "I know the guy on the back." And I was like, "Yeah, he's a good friend of mine." And it's made me realize, like, hey, why am I being a little grumpy butt? Like, get out of this funk. And I started like forcing a smile at first, but it really like resonated with me about like, no matter what we're doing, Jesus is always there. He's always a part of it. And even when we're being grumpy or upset or angry or mad or whatever's going on, Jesus is always there with us. And sometimes, I'm not the best representation of what God has called me to be, but He does stuff like that to put me back in line. But today I wanted to talk about what it means to be a servant leader. It is something that I've talked with a lot of my staff at the gym. Many people think, when you get promoted, you move up in the ladder, that you're above other people. And I've always found that that's not the case. The one that's higher is always the one that gets people that you're below. You're the one helping others get to that point. I've used the analogy, you don't see a house that's sitting on its roof and goes to its base. It's starting at the base. So the most important is the lowest part. But here in John 13, I'm going to go through verses 1 through 17, and then we'll go through and I'll talk about it. It says, "Now before the feast of the Passover, Jesus, knowing that His hour had come, that He would depart out of this world to the Father, having loved His own who were in the world, He loved them to the end. And during supper, the devil had already put into the heart of Judas Iscariot, the son of Simon, to betray Him. Jesus, knowing that the Father had given all things into His hands, and that He had come forth from God and was going back to God, got up from supper, laid aside His garment, and taking a towel, He tied it around Himself. Then He poured water into the wash basin and began to wash the disciples' feet and to wipe them with the towel which He had tied around Himself. So He came to Simon Peter. He said to him, 'Lord, are you going to wash my feet?' Jesus answered and said to him, 'What I am doing you do not realize now, but you will understand afterwards.' Peter said to Him, 'You will never wash my feet, ever.' Jesus answered him, 'If I do not wash your feet, you have no part with me.' And Simon Peter said to Him, 'Lord, not only my feet, but my hands and my head.' Jesus said to him, 'He who has bathed needs only to wash his feet, but is completely clean. And you are clean, but not all of you.' For He knew that the one who was betraying Him, for this reason He said, 'Not all of you are clean.' So when He had washed their feet and had taken His garment and reclined at the table again, He said to them, 'Do you know what I've done to you? You call me teacher and Lord, and you are right, for so I am. If I then, the Lord and teacher, washed your feet, you also ought to wash another's feet. For I have given you an example that you should also do as I did to you. Truly, truly, I say to you, a slave is not greater than his master, nor is one who is sent greater than the one who sent him. If you know these things, you are blessed if you would do them.'" So there's a lot to unpack there. I'm going to start with the Passover feast. For those who don't know what the Passover feast is, it is when the Jewish people would celebrate Passover, which is the time where they were enslaved into Egypt. Moses comes, "Let my people go." Wouldn't do it, 10 plagues, and then the last one, God wipes out the whole firstborn. And He instructs Moses to tell the people to put the blood of the lamb over the hedge of the doorway, and the angel of death will pass over their house and no one shall die. And so this is where they're getting ready to celebrate that. And it's not ironic that this is the feast of Passover right before Jesus becomes the last Passover lamb. It's God's timing. He does things for a reason. A little tidbit he pointed out to me this morning when I was looking over my notes is during this time when Egypt, when he did the killing of the firstborn, he took out a whole generation. Many people just say, oh yeah, it's all the babies. No, not necessarily. Some people only have one child. Some people have one child and then 2 years, 8 years, 12 years later, they have another one. He took out that whole generation of firstborns. And I was like, when you look at it that way, it's a little different because you're taking an entire block of time and wiping it out, where these people are going to be missing. And it made me start thinking about it, the children of Israel after, it gets out, runs through the Red Sea, God wipes out all of them, and then they begin to wander through the desert for 40 years. He wiped out that generation before they got to the Promised Land. Moses was not allowed to enter into the Promised Land. He was able to see it, but not allowed to enter. And neither were any of them that were grumbling and complaining during the time they were wandering the desert. Forgive me for complaining. But just a little side note there. ADHD's kicking in, but God pointed it out, and I'm going to dive deeper into that in my personal time. But it's the feast of the Passover, celebrating this, and Jesus knew that this was his final hour. In the account of Luke, in the Gospel of Luke, right before Jesus walks in, all of the disciples are arguing with who's the best, who's the greatest. For those who don't know, washing feet is not common these days, except in your own home, hopefully. But we don't come to places and start washing people's feet. It's not a common place. But in Jesus' time it was, because they only had sandals. And when you walked through the desert, the roads, there's animals that are pulling carts. And anybody that's been around animals that pull carts or of that nature, you know that when it's time to go, they go. So it may be in the middle of the road, and you may be stepping in it. And so between the dirt, the debris, and the nastiness of the roads and the ground, your feet get kind of nasty. So they would make it a tradition or a habit to wash their feet before moving into a building or before a meal. And because of how disgusting it was usually the lowest person in the room that would have to do it. They would grab the lowest of the slaves, to wash the feet. And at this point, all of the disciples are saying, "Nah, you do it. No, you call them. No, you call the slave. I did this for God. I did this for God. I did this. I'm the greatest. Muhammad Ali's over here." But Jesus doesn't even acknowledge it. Just walks in, takes his garment off, wraps his towel around him, and starts to wash their feet. The footnote here for this study Bible talks about this. It says the dusty and dirty conditions of the region necessitated the need for foot washing. Although the disciples most likely would have been happy to wash Jesus' feet because he's higher than them, they want to do something. It's like the guy at work that's sucking up to the boss. For them, this is Jesus, this is God. I'm not saying I wouldn't be any better, because I'd probably want to wash his feet too. I want to be on Jesus' good side all the time. They could not conceive of washing one another's feet. This was because in the society of the time, foot washing was reserved for the lowest of menial slaves. Peers did not wash one another's feet except very rarely and as a mark of great love. Luke points out that they were arguing about who is the greatest of them, so that none were willing to stoop to wash feet. When Jesus moved to wash their feet, they were shocked. His action served as symbolic of spiritual cleansing and as a model of Christian humility. Through this action, Jesus taught the lesson of selfless service that was supremely exemplified by his death on the cross. The disciples were so focused on their day-to-day life, or who was better than all of them, that they completely missed the greatest of all walking in their midst. And many times we get busy with life, we get busy with doing things, or we get frustrated, or we take a muscle relaxation, we become a grumpy butt, that we miss the opportunities that Jesus is walking right beside us. In my case, he was right on my back telling everybody hi, and I was being a little grumpy face on the other side. And kind of poked fun at it, but anybody that's seen the Lego Batman movie, the police officer that's got the happy face and the angry face, I was the angry face and Jesus was the happy face on the back. during that time. And I pray that, moving forward, I don't miss those opportunities of seeing Jesus walk through. I'm not focused on what's going on in my life, but focused on what he has for me. And then we get to the part of Peter. I've never related with somebody more than Peter. Peter, very prideful individual, but Peter was all in. He was either all in or not at all. There was no in between with Peter. Peter not wanting Jesus, who he considered God, to wash his feet because he's like, I can't do this for you. You're greater than me. There's no way you're going to wash my feet. To which Jesus replies, hey, if you want to be a part of my life, this has to happen. And he goes, all right, cool. Not just my feet, wash all of me. And I can see Jesus like rolling his eyes like, oh, calm down, Peter. It's fine. But I've been in a similar situation of like, hey, when I find what God wants for me, I just take it too far. And I go all in. And sometimes Jesus is like, hey, back it up a little bit. I don't need to wash your whole body. You should be clean if you bathed. I love how he put that in there. He who has bathed needs only to wash his feet. You've taken a shower today, right, Peter? So I've seen a lot of that happen with many people in my life. You get, especially in my line of work, you get people that eat whatever they want, never work out, and then they come to the gym and they immediately try to swing the pendulum to the other side of it, and they only eat salads or what they figured like fruit smoothies or something they figure is going to help for them, and they try to work out every day and they burn out and they quit. And trying to tell people like you got to find that middle ground. And in this case, it's not don't ever wash my feet, Jesus, but I also don't have to bathe all of you. You're not a baby, you're a grown man. I just need to wash your feet as a symbol of me cleansing you. And Jesus corrects him, so Peter doubles down, flips on the other side of it. But my favorite part of this whole talk is seeing that, while they're arguing, and it reminded me, I don't know if any of y'all watched the Chosen series, but there's a scene where Jesus is healing people off screen, and all the disciples are at camp talking, and they're arguing with one another, and they're having this conversation of like, are we worthy to be in his presence? Are we worthy to serve in his ministry? And Mary, of all people, is like, I think the whole reason he's here is because we're not worthy. And there's just dead silence. And everyone's like, all right, okay. And in this case, they're all arguing about who's the greatest, and Jesus, the one that is the greatest, immediately starts doing the work nobody wants to do. Jesus breaks the mold on what is known. Society knows that the servant washes, the lowest does all the dirty work. Jesus says no. In order to rise, you must fall. When we're blessed by God, we don't flaunt it and allow pride in. Instead, we find a way to serve. And I've told all of my staff that if you're going to work with me, it's not looking for the next way for me to get up. It's finding the best way to serve those around me. Whether it's coworkers or whether it's members that come in, we don't know what kind of day they have. We don't know what kind of walk Jesus has them on, but we can be there to be the best for them, and we can serve them. And the same is made here where Jesus is talking about it. And this is why I spend a lot of time saying things like, this is what I know at this time. I'm not 100% sure, but I believe this is the way we should do things, is because God's foundation of work, the way God does things, typically goes against the way man understands it. Takes everything and flips it upside down. And so, in this case, the best way to find the elevation is to serve. I was watching a podcast. It was George Jankos talking with Johnny Chang, and this is where they kind of pinged on, hey, I need to talk about this. But he was talking about how being humble is the place to be. Being at Jesus' feet is the place to be. And it's right there, and it keeps floating in and out. I had the thought, and it was gone. It's coming. maybe, eventually. Point of this whole story is in order to rise, Mary, asking for James and John. And she tells to Jesus like, hey, or not Mary, but their mother said, hey, can they be on the right and left of you in heaven? And Jesus looks at her and says, you don't know what you're asking for. In that case, she's wanting her sons to be in a place of honor, a place of elevation. And as a parent, same. I want my kids to be better than me. I want them to have more than me. I want their lives to be better than the life I had. And this mother is asking the same thing, but when we look at it from God's perspective, she really didn't know what she was asking. And Jesus knew at this point that he was about to become the last Passover lamb to take on all of our sins and all of the struggles that we would have, all of the sicknesses and disease and hurt. And he would be elevated to the throne because of the sacrifice he made to lower himself to us. And I find that to be the same case when every man starts to think about, hey, we can elevate ourselves, we can elevate up, we can become better. And honestly, the best way and the only way to really truly do that is to find a way to serve. So I would encourage everyone today, part of the homework Megan gave you all is to look at your life and figure out a way to serve somebody else, whether it's a spouse, child, grandchild, co-worker, or just a random stranger on the side of the road. I had a guy come in to the gym probably 8 months ago that is working on his flexibility, and his shoe came untied and he couldn't reach down to do it. And I was like, I got you, brother. And his face when I knelt down to tie his shoes was like, who are you and why are you tying my shoes? Because that's not something that's commonplace in today's society, and it breaks my heart that that is the case. So I would encourage you to look for that moment. Look for a spot where you could tie someone's shoe or help them out in any way you can. I love our blessing box on top of that. That really makes my heart happy that we do that here. But that's my homework for y'all today and for this week is to find a way to, instead of arguing amongst one another on who's the greatest, find a way to serve somebody.